What's up, y'all? Ian Power from the Fantasy 4-Pack here, bringing you guys our top 7 waiver ads of Week 9. Before we launch into the list, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when new content drops. Without further ado, let's dive into the list. Starting off at number 7, we've got Pat Freiermuth with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the only reason he's down this far at number 7 is because he's a tight end. And, tight ends are somewhat replaceable in fantasy football nowadays. But if you're hurting at the tight end position, if you don't have a guaranteed weekly starter like a Waller or a Pitts or a Kelsey, this is a guy who you should be focusing on getting onto your rosters, throwing some fab bucks at, because he has a pretty nice upcoming schedule with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles Chargers, Cincinnati, and he looks like to be heavily involved in this offense. Over the past 2 weeks, not counting his bye, obviously, he's had 60% and 78% of the snaps, getting more and more involved in the offense since that Juju injury, and he's had 14 targets over those 2 weeks, catching 11 of them. He's someone who I expect to continue to be highly involved in this offense going forward, and someone who fantasy managers should be able to rely on their fantasy squads. Jumping over to number 6, we've got Jordan Howard of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jordan Howard saw a huge bump in work this week from what he was doing before due to the Miles Sanders injury. We all expected it to be Kenny Gainwell who was going to shoulder the workload, but it ended up not being him. Ended up being a mix of Boston Scott and Howard. Howard is the back that I like less of the two of them, but he is still going to be usable for fantasy managers if you're in a really desperate spot. Maybe you lost James Robinson or you lost Derrick Henry. Jordan Howard is someone you can go out and grab and at least rely on him to get 6 to 10 touches and get some work around the goal line, which could be all you need to sneak you by a win or two while you're waiting for your team to get healthy. Jumping to number 5 here, we've got Rashod Bateman of the Baltimore Ravens. Rashod Bateman obviously missed the first 5 weeks of the season with a core injury. He came back in week 6 and through week 6 and 7 saw 65 and 63% of the snaps respectively. Now, just coming off his bye, he should be even healthier than he was in both those weeks, and I expect his role in the offense to continue to grow as his rookie joins this team and gets used to playing with Lamar Jackson and with Hollywood Brown more and more. He has got 6 targets in both of these games, and while I would like to see him start catching more of them and see his role increase a little bit, he's definitely someone you can use as a bye week fill-in or a low-end flex moving forward, and the ceiling is probably a low-end wide receiver 3 for this guy at the time being. So make sure to grab him and stash him and use him if you need to absolutely find a wide receiver streamer. Jumping over to the Jacksonville Jaguars for number 4, we've got Carlos Hyde here. Carlos Hyde is likely going to be filling in for James Robinson while he heals up from that ankle injury that he suffered this past week. Should only be a 1 to 2 week injury from what it sounds like, but that's still plenty of time to get some value out of Carlos Hyde, who saw 66% of the snaps after Robinson got hurt in week 8. He turned that into 9 carries for 32 yards, as well as seeing 8 targets and 6 receptions. This is a guy who is going to be used in this offense in a very similar way to how James Robinson was used if James Robinson is forced to miss time. And he's someone who I would be aggressively targeting if news comes out that James Robinson is indeed going to miss this week. I think that he has a real strong chance to turn in pretty good fantasy performances for managers. Maybe not against Buffalo, but if he does get to start against Indy, that's a pretty good spot for fantasy running backs. So go out there, grab him, and just pray you get a week or 2 out of him. Moving into the top 3 here, we've got Boston Scott, who saw 45% of the snaps this past week, turned that into 12 carries for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was a big week for the Philadelphia running backs, and I do expect Boston Scott to continue to shoulder the load and carry the mantle of RB1 for this Philadelphia team moving forward until Miles Sanders returns. He looked good on the field this past week. He gave fantasy managers no reason to doubt that he isn't going to be the guy. I'd like to see that snap percentage come up a bit, but ultimately in a game where the Eagles won big against Detroit, this could just be a matter of them wanting to save Boston Scott and not risk further injury to their running back core while they already have Miles Sanders on IR. Boston Scott is my 3rd favorite waiver ad of the week, and if you can't get either of the first 2 guys, he's someone who I would be aggressively targeting in all formats. Moving into number 2, we're going to be targeting 2 teammates here. Jeremy McNichols is my number 2 waiver ad on the week. Obviously, the news about Derrick Henry suffering what is likely season-ending surgery as far as fantasy is concerned is devastating to Derrick Henry managers. But there is a little bit of hope on the horizon for them. Jeremy McNichols only saw 23% of the snaps this past week, but Derrick Henry did play out that game on his broken foot, so I wouldn't be too worried about the snap percentage. What's encouraging is that he did see 3 targets last week, and his role is likely to increase. Now, I know the Titans signed Adrian Peterson yesterday, and he is going to eat into McNichols' workload a bit, but Adrian Peterson is old at this point. He's no spring chicken, and while I think he's going to see some work around the goal line in short yardage situations, Jeremy McNichols should see the long downs, should see third downs, should see obvious passing situations. He's going to be the back that you want to roster on this on this squad for a lot of the more PPR situations. I think he's going to carry a ton of value for fantasy managers and could be a bit of a healing balm for hurting Derrick Henry managers right now. And then finally, my top waiver ad of the week is Mr. Adrian Peterson himself. And realistically, I don't know what his workload is going to be in Tennessee, but I expect that he is going to be used in short yardage and in goal line situations. And with a team that has as much talent on it as Tennessee, I expect that AP is going to get plenty of scoring opportunities in this offense. I'm not particularly worried about the fact that he's 36. Obviously, he's one of the greats to ever play the position. He still has a great nose for finding the first downs and finding the end zones, and I expect him to get at least a decent workload in this offense. And at the end of the day, touchdowns are what make your hay for fantasy. It's why we're recommending Jordan Howard as a pickup, and it's why I think Adrian Peterson is a smash pickup this week, because you're going to get Adrian Peterson throughout the rest of the fantasy season, and it's going to likely turn into quite a few touchdown opportunities for you. So he's going to be a scary player to play on a week in, week out basis, but there are going to be weeks where he finds the end zone twice, and you're going to feel great about it. Start him with confidence the rest of the season. Those are our top 7 waiver ads of the week. If you have any other more specific waiver questions, make sure to reach out to us on Twitter. You can see my Twitter handle on the screen here. And our Twitter handles for the channel are at the Fantasy 4-Pack, at the Fantasy 4P_Ian, at Senpai Koala, and at the Foon. Reach out to us with any specific waiver questions, and we hope to see you guys on the next episode.